and there's still so much shame around sex and people's bodies, you know. Have you seen that? Do you see a lot of
Absolutely. I mean,
shame?
Everyone will be like, so when women come to see me, they will be, I'm so sorry, I didn't shave, or I didn't, right? Like, I'm so sorry, I hope it's okay. And like, yeah, of course it's okay, right? Like, this is your body. This is totally okay. And with men, sometimes they'll be like, oh, it's kind of cold in the room. Like, you know, like they'll make excuse. And I'm like, guys, I don't like, I'm not comparing you to anybody else. This is you, and we're going to take care of you. I'm like, it doesn't matter, right? That stuff doesn't matter to me, and it shouldn't matter to your partner. What matters is that you are both enjoying each other, you're having fun together, you're having pleasure, and that can be achieved no matter your anatomy, right? No matter how things look, you can find ways to pleasure each other that may involve penetration, may not. And again, it's really like there's so much you can do that is erotic and pleasurable, that is enjoyable if you just open your mind to it.
Where do you think all the shame and the stigma comes from? Do you think it's from a general lack of education, or do you think it's due to, you know, body image pressure from social media, which both men and women face? Everything. And think about when you were, if you probably don't remember this, but every kid at some point in time will maybe touch their genitals or maybe masturbate. They're doing it as a self-soothing technique. They don't know what they're doing, right? And the parent are like, don't do that. Right? The parent doesn't mean it in a bad way. They're just like, you don't do that in public, right? Or you don't do that in front of me. Or they are like, oh no, they also don't know that that's like a normal self-soothing technique. So immediately that instills shame, right? I should not touch myself. I should not talk about this. They didn't like it when I touched myself, so maybe I can't talk about this. Or if they did decide to try and talk to their parent about it, they might say, oh, no. They might have had an awkward response, right? Like, oh, I had a friend tell me the other day, I was watching Friends, and the couple was naked under the blanket, and my kid asked me, why are they naked? And she just sort of like brushed it off, right? And I was like, well, you should answer, right? Like, should have been like, well, they are intimate, they're together, they love each other, and they wanted to be naked together. Like, you don't have to get into the details, right? But answer the question, right? And when my son very first time asked me about sex, I was like, okay, I talked to his dad, and I was like, look, I'm going to talk to him about sex. And he's like, oh, I don't know. And I was like, no, if he has questions, I will answer them. And he's like, okay, fine, you do it. And so we often talk about sex and whatever questions he has, and, you know, with both my sons. And so I think it's really important that they know they can talk to me, and that I've even told them, like, if you see something, let me know. If you have questions, let me know. You might see a movie or something that you have questions about. And, you know, I sort of leave it open. We talk about it often enough. I mean, not like every day, but, you know, we talk about it enough so they know that it's normal to talk about sex, and that you can talk about it. And it begins, and I'm not saying I'm the world expert in talking about sex to kids, but I think that's where it starts. And then absolutely body shaming, especially with pornography, and you're seeing certain types of genitalia, certain lengths of genitalia, can be very, very strong. People, I mean, already body shaming is an issue with other parts of your body, right? But now add in something that's taboo that you can't talk to anybody about. And then add in the lack of education, knowing that this is normal and it's fine and healthy. Like, there's a lot of shame surrounding it in society, right? And so I think it's a lot of work that needs to be done to make it commonplace to discuss, but at least within your own home and within your relationships, it should be a safe place to talk about those things. Absolutely. Yeah. I love that you've made your family a safe space for your children, and and encourage discourse about sex without shame or stigma. It's so important.
Yeah.
Do you think pornography is harmful?
You know, I think that as an adult, using pornography for the most part is safe and healthy, as long as it's not become an issue where you're using it as a compulsion every day, avoiding other activities, and maybe avoiding intimacy or avoiding relationships because you'd rather watch pornography. So as an adult, you have the decision-making capabilities to manage that. As a child, you don't know what you're seeing, right? And you don't know how to regulate that necessarily. And so that's where we don't know. We probably will never know how it affects a growing brain, because no one's going to study that. That's not like a safe ethical question to study. But we know that the circuits are immature, and they're seeing things that maybe they're not ready to handle. And, you know, I think even if it doesn't cause them harm in terms of like they become, spending too much time watching it or whatever, when they first have sex with their partner and it's not like what they watched on pornography, that can be damaging, right? They can be like, something's wrong with me. I didn't respond like that, or my partner didn't respond like they did on the pornography. Now am I broken? And like that becomes a very shame-inducing problem. And so I think, I don't know in terms of younger people, and I do worry about that. And I do really worry about how it affects our psyche in terms of sex.
Well, it's super interesting. I grew up with the internet, but I remember, my first porno was a magazine.
Yeah. I mean, mine was a videotape on a VCR. Like,
I had those too. Yeah.
Like it was hard to get, right? You had to like find time where nobody was around, and, or you had to like know where to get it, or your friend had to have it, whatever it was, right? And it was not easy. Now it's too easy, right? It's too accessible.
Well, not only that, it's also different. Like I remember the vast majority of porn that I would encounter as a kid was just vaginal porn. And now it's like the porns today, it's like straight to anal. And so
but no, I mean, I think the issue is that the reason it's there is because people are watching it, right? Like it wouldn't exist if people were not continuing to consume it and desire it, right? Like sometimes I like will see these things, I'm like, God, this is so wild and crazy, but like people like it, like, people are watching it, right? And so I don't think it's like, yes, there could be better ethical standards in some pornography in terms of like making sure there's good consent and there's safety and we're treating, women correctly and whatever. But in terms of like what is being displayed, it's based on the market that wants to watch it.
Yeah.
Right?
I just wonder what it's doing to kids who encounter that. You know, like just that. It's just so different.
Well, that's why strangulation is on
there you
right?
Go.
Like people are seeing this and they're like, oh, this is what people want, and so then they try it, and who knows if they're really having consent or talking about it, or it's scary. It's really scary.
It's out there. You have to, if you choose to consume it, I think you really do have to be able to forge a healthy relationship with it. The same with hyper palatable ultra processed foods that are always at arm's reach today.
Yeah, I think it's just like learning how to, I mean, things have evolved, right? But so we didn't have smartphones. We didn't have access to whatever high dopamine producing thing, right? Like little games on your phone or checking your email 100 times a day or whatever it is that people do now that we never did before.
Yeah.
And so we just have to learn how to navigate our lives around the accessibility of that. And yes, hyperpalatable foods are everywhere, right? Like you can't go anywhere without seeing them, having access to them, and cheap and really easy to eat.
It's very comparable actually to, I mean, I remember when I was writing my second book and I found that there was, I mean, the data is in its infancy, but nonetheless I was reading, speculation that the neurobiological effects of consuming ultra processed junk foods is not that dissimilar to when you're consuming hyper palatable pornography.
Yeah.
It's super easy to access, there's no friction to accessing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's unlike, for the most part, anything that real sex is like. So it's got this like hyper real aspect to it, similar to hyper palatable foods that are way more delicious than anything you'd find in nature.
Yeah. And I think people like to use pornography as a scapegoat. Like this is the reason for all my problems, right? Like it's because you watch pornography that you're having all these issues. But it's not like the pornography specifically. It's just that like you're using that, just like people abuse food. If you're abusing pornography, it's really, that's the problem. It's not the actual thing. It's just something you can control, right? You can't get rid of food. Like I think, food's everywhere, you have to eat food, but you can't stop watching pornography. And so people are like, oh, I can control that and I can deal with that. And it's something that's, I can control and that will maybe improve my life significantly. And so I think it becomes this real scapegoat for a lot of people.
Do you see a lot of women getting procedures like vaginoplasties or labiaplasties?
Yeah, certainly. Certainly there are people who feel like they want their labia to look a certain way. And I think, I just tell all my patients that, really it's about making sure you want it for the right reasons, because no surgery, whether it's cosmetic or not, does not have a risk, right? Any procedure you do, anytime you even put a needle in your body for any reason, there's a risk associated with it. So forget like cutting you open or cutting a piece of you off, right? And so I think as long as people understand the risks, there are a lot of people who are really significantly, they actually have discomfort because of long labia, or they're really significantly bothered by it. And in those cases, you know, after you've ensured that you're in the right headspace, it's totally fine to go ahead and do it. But of course, everything has risk.
Are labia a sensitive tissue, or
they can be? Yeah, they are akin to sort of sort of like the scrotum. The labia majority, like the scrotum, the labia minora, do have some sensitive tissues there. And so you can have, after any surgery, but particularly after that, you can have like high sensitivity or, you know, low sensitivity, or things that can change with any sort of cut that you have. But most people tolerate it pretty well.
Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.